Major news out of the Supreme Court. When it comes to deciding tough issues in the 2020 race, this court, I can report to you now for the first time, is officially, currently, deadlocked. Now, this is exactly what many legal experts feared. The High Court unable to find any wider consensus heading into a potentially polarizing race with a president openly talking about illegally holding on to power. But here we are. Republicans asked the Supreme Court to limit counting mail ballots that were cast on time but arrive after Election Day, this in a key state, Pennsylvania. And the court has now deadlocked 4-4 on the matter, meaning they couldn't find any way to reach a wider consensus, even with Chief Justice Roberts joining the Democratic appointees to allow those additional votes to be counted. Now, legally, a tie basically goes to the runner, in this case, the decision as it stood in a lower court. So what does this mean? Well, number one, it's a win for Pennsylvania Democrats in the short term, but the case is not formally over. If a 2020 election did hinge on this issue, this could go back to the court. And now we know what we didn't know before, which is the current breakdown here. Democratic appointees and Chief Justice Roberts on one side signaling they back a legal approach that basically errs on the side of trying to count every vote and using time to do it, while the other Republican appointees signaling they would be potentially fine with doing limiting here, with not counting certain votes. Now, this 4-4 draw could change, of course, as Senate Republicans appear to have the votes to confirm Trump appointee Amy Coney Barrett next week, which means she would, of course, be a fifth vote on this very kind of case. And everyone knows how pivotal a fifth vote can be in a contested election.
The U.S. Supreme Court has just released its ruling in one of the most important decisions it will make in its modern history.
Let's work through this as carefully as we can, but let me get to the bottom line here. The judgment of the Supreme Court of Florida is reversed.
The Supreme Court of the United States has reversed the orders of the Florida Supreme Court on a very narrow majority, 5 justices to 4.
A de facto court victory tonight for George W. Bush. The counting in Florida by order of the U.S. Supreme Court is over.
That's what it sounds like when there's that key fifth vote, which in 2000 decided the race. Now, this year, Trump's proclaimed that his judges should be politically loyal to him. That's not how the Constitution works. That is actually more of a thug mentality, not unlike Rick Ross's famous explanation for why he is so calm in court. Quote, I run the game just by running with the felons, walking in the courtroom, sipping on a beverage. I know the judge, so I got a lot of leverage. Well, Trump does know this judge. Whether he knows how she would rule when it comes to voting rights, well, that's still anyone's guess. We're joined now by NYU law professor Melissa Murray. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I think it is fair to say that Donald Trump does have a Rick Ross mentality, which is thuggish, that if you have the right people in place and you think they owe you or they're your friends, you don't have anything to worry about. I'm curious, given the very seriousness of this, whether you think Trump is right to count on Barrett to be a potentially partisan vote, and what you see as the stakes in what looks to me like a pretty big case here.
Well, I certainly hope not. And I think the person who really hopes that that's not the case is Chief Justice John Roberts, who has gone on record to say that there's no such thing as Trump judges, no such thing as Obama judges, just federal judges doing their level best to decide these disputes as fairly as possible and to apply the law as fairly as possible. I think you have a situation here where the Chief Justice is likely incredibly worried that the court has already been bogged down by charges of partisanship, and this kind of dispute only makes it more likely as we go into the election that the court will become a flashpoint in what is going to be a very polarizing election.
Whether this kind of case comes back to the court from Pennsylvania or a similar state, if there is an open or contested result in November, does this mean that if Barrett joins that block that I identified of those other 4, they could stop the counting and throw out mail ballots that otherwise were postmarked on time?
Well, it's very clear that there are 4 justices